'Tis the time of year for autumn and all things. Oh, you changed the background? I thought we had like leaves and you're an ass. So Mario's like, oh, look at this cool background. It's autumn. It had all these leaves. I was like, let's go.
I'm changing it every time now.
He changed it because of this. He changed it to a map. What is this?
Well, we gotta cover a lot of area. You know what I mean? 2/3 of the world is covered by water. The other third is by Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. So.
Oh my God! Oh, what a distance we had to go for that one. All right. All right.
Anyway, I will do the social thing. You can find all our socials: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook in our link tree. You can also find our Patreon link as well, where you're able to actually watch these episodes live. Not right now, obviously, but we put the link in for the Patreon members. You can watch the chaos behind the scenes. We will break down the fourth wall for you.
And we got a private chat. So we got a private chat with just the Patreon members.
It's pretty awesome. We also this episode is sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes, as you will see at the end of the video. His brochure is in the description of this video in association with DeanBlundell.com. Paul, we reference all the time on this stupid little channel that we have that we always worry about Josh Allen running because we don't want him to turn into Cam Newton.
Yeah.
But we never really give a lot of context to it.
No.
So I decided to look up Superman and Josh Allen's stats. Josh Allen has played 67 games so far in the NFL. So it wasn't very hard to find his stats, but I had to go and condense it for Cam's. Okay.
Yeah. Well, a lot more seasons, right?
Yes, obviously. A lot more seasons. He's only 33, dude. This guy could still be playing in the NFL, which is what our worry is. I mean, Allen is 26. Right. Can you imagine Allen being done in 5 years?
Oh, God, no.
I don't.
But, I mean, that's what happened with Newton.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. As soon as he was done in Carolina and he went up to New England, he was washed. But I just want to give you guys the first 67 game comparison, the important numbers. I mean, obviously, different completion percentage, different throw, different yardage, all this other stuff. Allen actually has 30 more passing touchdowns than Newton at this point in their career. Obviously throwing a lot more, but the point is this. Newton was sacked 162 times in 67 games playing in Carolina, and he had 517 rush attempts in 67 games.
Oh.
517.
That's 100. That's what? Because Allen's at 469 right now.
Yeah.
Right to this game.
Yep. And he's been sacked 127 times. So he's been sacked almost 35 less times.
Mm-hmm.
So every 2 games, and has run the ball 50 times less. Does that worry you, Paul? Only 50 attempts separate these two guys in their first 67 games.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm worried.
It's about that. I think the difference is that with Cam, it is a little bit of a different animal, right? Because there are some design runs for Josh, but the first 3 years of Cam's career, he was intentionally on the move a lot. And a lot of times it was drop back, hits the third step in his drop, and just would take off, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really think it's the same in that respect. I think Cam ran a bit more when he necessarily didn't have to, because he just didn't read the defense all that well his first 3 seasons. So I think Cam rushed more often than Josh because of things that, he just wasn't there yet. It was Josh's rookie year 3 times in a row for Cam Newton, right?
I think
it's just kind of different in that respect.
I think it could have been a developmental thing. I don't think that Cam was surrounded with. I think for a year though he was surrounded by Dorsey, wasn't he?
Dorsey was the quarterback coach in Carolina for a very brief period of time.
So I'm just saying, you look at all this stuff. 50 attempts difference in 67 games. You can't just say he's running a lot more because he doesn't know what I think this could also be a manifestation of everyone wanted a first round running back for the Bills. And I understand why you would want a first round running back, because then it takes the heat off of Josh Allen running. However, we have to remember he had D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart there.
That was going to be my counter here, right? Was, and that was the thing, that Newton didn't throw to those backs. Like those guys, he didn't throw to those running backs. That's what I mean. You could tell when a quarterback doesn't take time in the pocket when you just look at the reception total for the running back. And he just never threw to the backs. And that's because if there wasn't something there on his first read, he just took off.
Yeah. That's the craziest part, because they were both highly drafted backs.
Mm-hmm.
So you had two of those guys in there who should have been running the ball, but what the Carolina brass, I think, wanted to do was they wanted to create another option offense. That's why he had so many carries, I believe, in his first 67 starts. And if it continues to go on the way it is, they're separated by 200 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns in their first 67. This is why the longevity of the games actually matters here. How could you have 67 games played by 2 different style quarterbacks, yet 200 yards, 50 carries, and 3 touchdowns separate them?
Well, I think
it's insane to me.
Well, I think one, obviously, the game's a little bit different than it was then, right?
Yeah, but
I think
there's more throwing now,
right? But the one thing that we're not talking about that I think is probably pretty critical here is the fact that and I can't believe I'm going to say this after Josh Allen just leapt over somebody in the last game, but I think Allen is ultimately taking less impact than Newton did up to this point, right? Even though Josh takes on contact, right?
Have a point. The type of contact you're saying.
But I think with Newton, he was running into bad situations, right?
Yeah.
Where Allen is waiting for things to break down and then will take off when there's space, right? He's choosing contact. I don't think Newton was choosing contact, right? Josh is choosing violence when he wants to choose violence. Newton would, he was running right up into linebackers, 3 yards from the line of scrimmage. It's just different.
Yeah, I think, and you know what though, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the whole Cam Newton came into the NFL like LeBron James did it in the NBA. Mm-hmm. He was 6'5", 260 pounds, ran like a deer. You can't, and because of that, defenders were actually defending themselves when he ran the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So the shots that he took when he was in the pocket, not just running, when he was in the pocket, seemed to be a little bit excessive. And he said, hey, listen, I'm not getting the calls that all these other quarterbacks are getting because of the type of player that I am. Mm-hmm. I think you're right. We are in a different time right now in the fact that quarterbacks are more protected than they were when Cam Newton first came into the league. But he was getting mauled back there. Let's just be honest. Yeah. If any of that stuff happened to like a Tom Brady or any of those other quarterbacks like that, there would have been flags and fines immediately. But because it was Cam and he was such a physical specimen, it wasn't it was like, okay, like they're like, oh, I'm getting abused back there. Well, you're big. You can take it. Like, no, I'm not Thanos. I'm not knocking the shit off.
Well, I do think it's fair to call out that in Newton's rookie season, he rushed for 14 touchdowns, which that's absurd, right?
From a quarterback, yes.
Yeah, that's
when you have two high drafted running backs, yes.
Right.
Were Williams and Stewart there at that time?
Yeah.
I think
they had to have been. They had to have been. Give me 1 sec. I'll tell you in a second. But they absolutely had to have been.
Carolina has Jimmy Clausen to thank for Cam Newton, by the way.
Oh, talk to me about that. What do you mean?
He went 1-15 the year before.
That's true. That is true. You are right about that. So they had rushing D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart. D'Angelo Williams ended up running for 7 touchdowns, 836 yards. Jonathan Stewart 4 touchdowns, 761 yards. Newton ran for 706.
Jesus.
But they ran an option offense. Like that's really what that's what they were doing.
So obviously completely different offenses, completely different times.
Yep.
But the connection is being in McDermott,
Mhm.
both being there at the same time, seeing a very flamboyant personality at quarterback who can run the ball as well as throw it. I mean, let's just not. Cam Newton does not have Josh Allen's arm. That doesn't mean that Cam Newton did not have an arm. He threw freaking pistols out there. He had a
Right.
cannon.
Right.
So that being said, they had a front row seat for Cam Newton. Hopefully, they are going to be a little bit more cautious with their other franchise quarterback that they take, and hopefully not just having him for 5 years after his contract gets signed.
Well,
Because
there's a systemic difference between Allen and Newton, just as a passer alone, right? But
yeah,
I think Newton took a lot of punishment in the pocket, man,
he
because
did.
he got sacked an awful lot over his
He
career.
did.
Like, he got sacked an awful lot. And part of that, I think, is because, one, there was no anticipation. That was the one thing as a quarterback that he just never had, was he never had anticipation. And Allen's got it in spades,
He does.
so he gets himself
Yeah, he
out of
can.
bad
He
situations.
can. He can. He has a little bit of a sixth sense. But I like the design runs. Obviously, they worry us. But
Mhm.
I just wanted to, I just wanted to come on here and talk with you about it because we do make the comparison all the time, still on a lot of the post games. And we talk with #Nation all the time about. We say we just don't want Allen to become like Newton. And everyone, if you're just watching us for the first time, or this is the first time you stumbled over this video, what does that mean? Well, we did a comparison of their first 67 games back to back, and Allen has like one less carry per game than Cam Newton, and Cam Newton is 33 years old, and no one's even thinking about touching him as an NFL quarterback.
Right. Yep.
So we don't want the same future for Josh Allen. We want him to play in Buffalo, obviously, forever, but for 15 years at least. So that being said, when we make those comparisons, that's what we want to do. I'm still worried looking at the statistics, even though both of those offenses are completely different. But I think in the long run, Dorsey will be more cautious with Josh Allen. But this doesn't count times where he has that sixth sense and is able to get out of the pocket and just runs like a maniac and thinks he's a runaway freight train and has to run over a defensive back.
I want to point out from a career stat standpoint, right? From a career stat standpoint, if I know people will say, when Cam Newton was in New England, he was a sitting duck, because again, things were that New England team was bad. Right. That was a bad New England team. But over the course of that season, got sacked 31 times. Right. But unfortunately, that was among the career lows for him when he was in New England. Right. Which is crazy to think that 31 sacks was near career low for him. But in 81 more games than Josh Allen over the course of his career. Right. Because I think we can bookmark and say Cam Newton's career is over at this point. Right.
Yeah.
He played 81 more games, yet he was sacked 205 times more than Allen is right now.
Whoa.
And that's what I mean. I think that's the difference, because we talk, and you can look at the rushing stats, you can look at the touchdowns and say they're very comparable, right? But the truth of the matter is Newton just simply took more impact than Allen. And Allen chooses violence now, which I think is probably the thing that gets me most, is that I wish he were more selective there. And he's playing a young man's game, right?
Yes.
And we know that those hits are cumulative, right?
100%.
So do I want to see that week 4, week 5? Absolutely not. Do I want to see those hits when they're beating the living piss out of Pittsburgh? No. Throw the ball away. You're up 24 points. It's not even halftime. Throw the ball away. And I don't think Josh is at the point where that competitor is smart in him yet with that cumulative impact, right?
That will come with more time, I believe.
Right. And unfortunately, that's a lesson you learn the hard way, right? True. I mean,
he's been hurt before, so he should, now he wants to,
but Mark, you played the position, right? You get.
Oh yeah. So your concentration as far as Allen goes, and when we compare him to Newton, is okay. He can run out of the pocket. That's fine, because then you can either throw the ball away or you can slide. You can do a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
It's the impact that just coming straight at you in the pocket that you're worried about, taking its toll on Josh Allen.
Well, that and when he's choosing contact for 2 extra yards in a game where they're up 21 points.
Yeah, I think that
That's
number
the
one, that
competitor
has
in
to
him.
happen. Yeah,
That's the
that has to
competitor.
be taken down a little bit. Well, like you said, he's still young. He's 26, 25, 26. He's a kid. I mean,
Expensive kid.
Let's be
very
honest.
expensive.
He's a very expensive kid. I mean, to you and me, he's a child. But he's a Clydesdale when he runs the ball, unfortunately.
Right.
But I mean, something to think about, Bills fans and hashtag Nation, when he starts to take off. Those are some of the reservations that Paul and I have, about, because the connection is obviously Bean and McDermott. They were there for Newton. They're here for Allen. Yep. They see him run around. He was compared to Allen when he was drafted because no one thought he could throw the ball like this. And, like we said, in the first 67 games, he does have 30 more passing touchdowns than Cam Newton. So that probably attributed to some of the throws that he had that Allen, that maybe Newton didn't see, in those games. So it is what it is. But those are some of the numbers behind Allen versus Cam Newton and the impact that both of those players have taken early in their career. So,
hey, go Bills.
That's right.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth, and right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions so we can take the next step to your financial freedom here in the Valley of the Sun, utilizing real estate. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!